This is the Way the World Ends by James Morrow. So this is episode 22 of a series I'm doing called The Masterpieces of Science Fiction. I'll leave a link to the announcement video in the description if you haven't watched that already. Now this book was copyright 1986, and we have cover art by Jill Carla Schwartz. And I do really like the overall design of the cover. And then you can see this dragon with all these nuclear warheads kind of sticking off of its spine. We've got, I believe this is kind of the original paperback version that came out. And there's this quote on the front by Arthur C. Clarke that says, "The only book in the last 10 years that I've read twice, a remarkable achievement." And after reading this, I'm really kind of glad that I'm not the only one that didn't get it the first time. No, I'm just kidding. Arthur C. Clarke probably got it. He probably just wanted to read it again. And while I was confused through many parts of this book, in the end it was kind of wrapped up and it wasn't that confusing. Now, I had a lot of expectations going into this book. For one, James Morrow is kind of likened to Kurt Vonnegut a lot, and I'm a huge fan of Kurt Vonnegut. And I knew this was going to have a lot of like satirical elements to it, which I'm fine with if done right. The other thing is this is like a post-apocalyptic book, and that is kind of been traditionally one of my favorite subgenres of science fiction. And so I was really thinking this was going to be an amazing read, maybe a new author that I'd really get into. And while I liked it, it probably didn't live up to the expectations I put on it ahead of time. And so I had to kind of try to remind myself that. But let's just get into the book. Now, this book, in the very beginning, you start off in like the 1500s with Nostradamus. Most people know he predicted all these things that sort of happened or kind of closely happened. But in the book, in the beginning, in the middle, and then at the end, there's a little excerpt from Nostradamus back in this days. And it does tie into the modern day story that is the meat of this book. And it was done pretty good. You had Nostradamus, and there were some things I don't really want to spoil, but he's kind of doing his thing, and he's finishing people's sentences for him, and it's pretty witty. I really like the parts with Nostradamus, but they were very short. These little sections are just a couple pages long. So then you get into the meat of the story, and this whole book is basically revolving around a main character, and his name is George Paxton. And this is 1986, kind of at the end of the Cold War. But in this book, the Cold War is still going full blast. And most of the U.S., the population there, they're kind of trying to prepare one way or another for maybe this inevitable end of the world. And there's these companies selling suits that will save you from radiation and filter the air and do all these kind of things. And our main character, George Paxton, his profession, he engraves headstones. And so he's, not rich by any means, and he's trying to provide for his family. He has a wife and a little daughter, and he's trying to save up enough money, or he wants to buy suits for the whole family. But he knows he should just start first with his daughter. So he's trying to get one of these suits for his daughter. And he ends up kind of getting a suit, and he gets home and finds out his wife lost her job. And so they have to return it. And then he kind of finds in a roundabout way there's another company that sells these suits. And he goes and talks to this person, and they get him to sign this contract, and they'll just give him one of these suits for free. And it kind of feels like he's in a no-win situation. So George ends up signing this contract, kind of admitting that he had something to do with this arms race, which is completely absurd. He just engraves headstones. But he really wanted the suit, and he wants to take it home to his daughter. And on his way home to take it to his daughter, basically the world gets destroyed through nuclear holocaust. He's able to survive this somehow, and he ends up on this ship with a few other survivors, some of the last survivors left of humanity. They're kind of captured by these people. I forget exactly what they call them, but they're basically entities from the future that have kind of been robbed their part in history because of this nuclear war. And so they want to take our main character George and these other people who actually did play a part in it down to Antarctica to put them on trial. That's the main setup of the book. I don't really want to go into depth too much more than that, but I want to say there's a lot of other things to say about this. This book has a lot of references to Alice in Wonderland. There's even, MAD, mutual assured destruction, is a big theme in this book. And they kind of tie that into the Mad Hatter in a way. And it has this feeling of just this kind of fantastical, absurd, satirical story. It's very, very unique. The absurdity in this book is to the roof. If you think some of Vonnegut's books are absurd and satirical, which they are, this brings it up a little bit more. And the book ends up wrapping up the story. I was not really sure how the ending was going to be. Actually, I had no idea at all what was ever going to happen in this book. This book will keep you on your toes. There's a part during the trial that kind of drags on a little bit there. And you can kind of see what's going to happen during most of the trial. But this book is just very unique. It keeps you on your toes. You can't see what's coming next. I was confused through lots of it. There's characters you don't know if they actually play a part in the story. And in the end, it is wrapped up pretty well, a pretty good ending. And yeah, so overall, it was a solid book. There's tons of things that probably went over my head in this book. James Morrow has a lot of religious themes. There's a lot of biblical references in this book. And overall, he's really got a message he's pounding into you here. It gets, I wouldn't call it preachy, but there is, there's just a lot of this theme about in an eventual destruction of the world in an arms race. Who is to blame? Are we all to blame? Even the little lowly tombstone carver, or should we only put the generals who were just following orders on trial? There's a lot of deep philosophical thinking in this book. I grasped some of it, but I'm sure I missed a lot. I'm sure I missed a lot of the biblical references. But it was still a very enjoyable read for what I got out of it. I'm still not sure what I'm going to score this. The absurdity got a little much. I think Vonnegut's level of absurdity and satire is like the perfect spot for me, and I know everyone's different. Douglas Adams, I think he pushes the comedy and the satire and the absurdity a little too much to me, and this was kind of along those lines. I almost get this like fatigue from just all of these absurd things. Vonnegut will at least kind of run you through a story and then throw some absurdity out at you and then jump back into the story, and it kind of gets a little bit more serious. And this was just kind of like one after the other. But it was done masterfully. Like, his writing, the way he wove this tale together was fantastic. It's a hard one to recommend because in the end, I don't really think this book read like much of a science fiction book. Even this post-apocalyptic subgenre that most of us are used to, it's really hard to lump this in with books like The Road or The Stand or, Lucifer's Hammer, some of these other books that I've read that are post-apocalyptic and I love. This is just very, very unique. And so if you're into religion, philosophy, and you want to try something different and be prepared for the absurdity and the satire and the humor and the amount of acronyms that are thrown out in this book, then give this one a shot. Also, I'd like to mention it's not that long. It was like 265 pages. So during the trial, the second half of the book spends a lot of time in this trial down in Antarctica. That's the only time where I felt like the book was dragging a little bit for me. Other than that, the pacing, the events that were happening just kept me engaged the whole time. So that's it. It's a hard one to rate. It's a hard one to recommend, but it was still a very interesting book. I'm glad I read it. And I think at some point I might give the Godhead trilogy, at least the first book by James Morrow, a shot, because I feel like I liked his writing. I want to give him another shot. I'd probably give him multiple more shots just because he has such a unique voice and he is a really good writer. So that's where we're at there. Now, I am going to try to sneak in one, or I guess it's kind of two books, and these are part of the series that I'm doing. This is The Lost World and the Poison Belt by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And I've got this edition, this kind of library binding that has both of them in one. I'm going to try to squeeze this in by the end of the month. And then on my monthly wrap up, I'm going to try to kind of do a bit of a TBR. I'm usually a mood reader. I don't like to announce what I'm going to read because I might want to change my mind. And I know I could do that. But this month's wrap up, I think I'm going to try to make a commitment on a couple spooky books to throw in the mix this month. And so just look for that video and look for this review video coming up. And once again, thanks for watching.